Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the stream. I wish I was trying to think of more interesting and new ways to open my stream. Exciting. Maybe do it with an accent. Maybe I'll open with an accent next time. Just to keep you on your toes a little bit. I don't know. Perhaps I will. Perhaps I won't. A bit duller today. That's why we've got the light on. Usually it's nice and bright, isn't it? And it's really easy to see me and that. But hopefully, it being a little bit duller outside today will mean that people will stop going outside all the time and having barbecues and meeting people when they've been told specifically not to. Again, sorry to those of you who are watching this in the future who that doesn't make sense to. I was thinking as well, just before we get into it, isn't it going to be weird? Like when your grandparents or your parents have something to say, like, oh yeah, do you remember in '93 when blah, blah, blah happened? And you're like, no, because I wasn't alive, or I was 2 or something. You're going to have one now. You're gonna have a. Oh, I remember back in 2020. Do you remember that? Yeah. Do you remember the lockdown? Do you remember that when that happened? You're gonna have one of them. So that's a bit of a treat for you there. I might do a video on that actually. That could be a good thing. I could dress up like an old person or something and go, oh well, back in 2020. I suppose that's the as much as the video would do though. So that's not really. I think I've noticed what's tickling my nose as well. I think it's my moustache. That's the worry of having a mustache, isn't it? That's the trials and tribulations of having facial hair. Sometimes it's going to work against you. Sometimes it's going to be your best friend. Other times it's going to be your worst enemy. Your worst enemy, though, not just your enemy, your worst one. Anyway, we're going to get into it today. Going to do a little bit of technology. I've actually put the links already. I usually put them in at the end of the stream, but I've actually put them in at the start of the stream today because the best way to do this, probably for you, is to watch the videos, pause the stream, watch the videos consistently as you go through, rather than watch the videos afterwards, because it'll just make more sense to you. Okay, because we've got a little bit, quite. I think there's about 4 or 5 videos that are usually in the lesson, but obviously I can't show them on the stream. I think physically I can't show them on the stream. I don't think you'd be able to hear them if I played them, but simultaneously, if I could play them to you, I can't because of copyright things, so they won't let me. All right, so I've put them in there anyway. So have a look in the description; you'll be able to find them. There's a couple of there. There's a couple on CAD, a couple on robotics and stuff like that. So today we're going to do a bit of revision on technology, as I said, revision-esque. I'll go through stuff. I won't be going through stuff in crazy detail because we have actually covered it before. But yeah, it'll give you an opportunity to actually, give your own opinions about things as well, which is a nice little thing, isn't it? So let's get to it. All right, here we are. So technology, what is technology? Do people? As I said, I personally, I have a lot of technology in my life. I have my MacBook, I have my phone, I have this ultra wide monitor, I have this what is this? A Blue Yeti microphone. I've got these Bluetooth things. I've got, what else am I using? I use all sorts of technology. I've got this this solid state drive. There's a wide range of things. TVs. I'm quite a techie person. I like technology. Although and we've talked about it before of people being proud of not using technology, being proud of being technologically illiterate, in the sense that saying, oh no, I don't know how to use that, or I can't use Android phones, or no, they confuse me. Well, are you an idiot or something? Have you ever used one? Because they're very similar, like they're pretty much, the same. Oh no, I can't use Windows. Oh no, I don't understand computers. Me, ha ha ha. Well done. You're an idiot then, aren't you? Essentially, because they're very, very simple. Children can use computers, and yet 45-year-olds can't use them. What's going on? Okay. It's crazy, isn't it? And I think a lot of the time is the psychology of the person. And we're going to talk about the implementation of technology. And that's why I mention this, is because it's the vast majority of technological issues are not usually caused by the technology itself. They're caused by the implementation of it. And that could be an unwillingness to do it. And we talk about it in motivation theory and things like that, people doing things and a lack of motivation to change, a lack of motivation to get involved, a lack of motivation to physically get involved with new technology or change a system or things like that. And you as a business owner are going to be going up against that all the time. You as a business analyst, as a student, you're going to be having to talk about that, but understand that it's not actually the cost of the technology or the implementation of the physically implementing it, actually physically getting it in, installed. That's really the main issue. The main issue usually with technology is the fact that people, like the actual employee is very, very powerful in the sense that they can completely destroy your chances of implementing this effectively. So it's important to remember that, and important to remember the kind of people that you're employing and the kind of mentality that people have. You'd be surprised at how many people work for very large companies who have little or no technological expertise or that, and as I said, we've talked about it where we said about people saying that they have technological expertise and they know how to, or they put it on the CV, I know how to use social media. No, having an Instagram page isn't knowing how to use social media. That's not what they're talking about. No, why would they care? Why would these businesses care? If you can do it, anyone can do it, can't they? As I said, children can do it. So why are you putting it on your CV? I can use it. Yeah, I can use a bloody Instagram or Facebook or whatever. They're not talking about that, are they? They're talking about using the implementation of social media to be able to sell a product. Not, I can put a picture of what my dog did last night on Facebook. Yeah, no, everybody can. It's very simple to do it. So let's get into it anyway. So first of all, explain how new technology can be used by businesses. This includes the use of information technology, also known as IT. CAD, CAM, and robotics. Evaluate the impact of new technology on the various stakeholders of a business. Evaluate the importance and impact of technology on the operation of a business. And we're going to have a little look at a past paper question, which I've put in at the bottom. You've got it actually in your packs already, but I've put it in. Thinking we're going to have a look at some questions at the end. So we're not just talking about IT, and we're not just talking about, basic technology. We're going to talk about certain things. So when I say technology, when I ask technology of my class, when I want... when we do our prep for things, I want them to be saying, and I need you to be saying to me, CAD, CAM, IT, robotics, because they are the technology that we're talking about. We're not talking about phones, email, that kind of stuff. We are going to talk about them in passing because they're going to come under IT, aren't they, essentially, communication things and things like that. But I don't want you to be thinking like, technology, I know that. Technology is, computers and things like that. Yeah, to an extent, but that's not what we mean. All right. So let's start off by having a look at these. Now, we talked about these right at the start of the spec when we're talking about primary, secondary, and tertiary sectors, if you can remember which these are. Primary sector is anything that is taken out of the ground. So these are the companies that physically deal with taking things out of the ground, like extraction of minerals, extraction of stuff, extraction of fruit or wheat or oil or whatever it is. Anything which is natural, which they're having to physically, collect. So that's your primary sector. Now, what kind of machinery then do you reckon farmers, extraction teams, that kind of stuff, it can massively, change depending on the circumstance, can't it? But if we were to think about farmers, you've got your combine harvesters, you've got your machinery that's able to plant seeds. You've got your you've got those big machines, haven't you, that go around and put fertilizer down. You've also got the ones that put the what they call the anti-bug stuff, like stuff to get rid of pests and stuff, pesticides and things like that. If they're putting those down, they've got to use technology to use that as well, haven't they? So they've got either the sprayers or they might have big machinery to do that as well for them. But the main thing I think for farmers and things is the actual physical collection, those big things with the claws that churn up the ground and they can plant seeds and things like that. It would be significantly more expensive, significantly more time consuming for them to not use technology at all, wouldn't they? But they will use other things as well, because remember, if you talk about primary sector, there's a wide range. If you're talking about oil, you'd be talking about oil extraction, and oil extraction would have a wide range of quite technical ways of doing it, wouldn't it? But a lot of it, I always find with primary sector, is quite, I don't know, classically technological, shall we say, because, and what I mean by that is it's quite big pieces of machinery doing things. It's not like really, really complicated computer systems. It's more physical things which they use to do the jobs with. Okay. Now, secondary, if you remember, secondary is your manufacturing process. So it's the bit where we've got the primary stuff, we've got the stuff that we came from our farmers. They've took all the oranges in, for example, and then we've got the secondary bit. And this is the bit where we make these. This is where we process these into something. So we might want to make orange juice or something like that, isn't it? So in terms of this, we are going to be using more complicated systems now, aren't we? We are going to be using IT more. So in terms of actually communicating with each other, the internet, email, things like that, phones. But we're also, not to say that we can't use it in primary, but it's probably going to be more implemented in secondary. But also, we're going to start looking at things with machinery which is there to physically pulp the oranges, or to keep track of stock, maybe package it. So there's a wide range of things. Think about all the things that could happen from getting it from an orange to an Orangina bottle, or whatever it is that we choose to do. There's going to be a wide range of different technology that's involved in that, isn't there? And there's going to be a wide range of different machinery and things like that. So in the actual manufacturing process, you could go anywhere from that to car manufacturer, where we have loads of different machines, don't we? Massive robotic arms that put the back windows in cars, and cars that machines that you can put a car in and it'll run the wheels to make sure that they're adequately tested and things like that. So there's a significantly wider range of technology available in the secondary, I think, because of the manufacturing process and things like that. But as I said, I don't work in that field myself. So if you are a farmer, if you know someone who is in primary sector work, you might say, well, actually it's a lot more technologically advanced than Mr. Businessman says, in which case, yeah, okay, I'm okay with that. And finally, we've got a tertiary. Tertiary is the likelihood that you've come into contact with, and a lot of the time when we're talking to students about their part-time jobs, they're talking about things like supermarket work and working in restaurants, and just things that low skill, low paid jobs, really, things that they do part time. And you will have come into contact things with these. These are more like your buying systems. These are more like your tracking systems, in terms of, like, you work at a supermarket, you have your beep thing, don't you? Beep as it goes across. That the reason it's there is to track. It's not only to tally up and allow you to pay for a product, but it's also it's a really, really important stock tracking system, isn't it? To make sure that we can actually track what's then, we can track who's, whether we need to rebuy things and things like that. So you get some bread, you put it through. That's why they're so funny about only, like, actually making sure that you scan every individual one instead of scanning. Bloody hell, my nose is annoying me today. Scan every individual one, even though it might be the same. It might be two different versions of the same thing, but essentially it isn't, because on the stock system it will be two different types of product that they will have to reorder separately. So it allows them to keep track of that, but it also allows them to keep track of other things, doesn't it? So you may have come into contact with that. You may have worked on tills. You may have worked on things like, they've got quite modern tills now, haven't they? In terms of, you've got that you can use contactless payments, things like that. The whole credit card, debit card thing, that's all technology, isn't it, at the end of the day? And we use it a lot in tertiary sector environments. And obviously the internet stuff is a big one now as well, isn't it? The connection to the internet, and the things that we can do with the internet as well. From a business's perspective, they can sell, they can do all these things. So can you see, the only thing I'm trying to draw your attention to is just the difference in technology. They're all implementing technology, but it's just in slightly different ways. And you yourself will have your own first-hand information and first-hand experience of probably the tertiary sector more than the primary and secondary, unless you work on a farm or something like that, which you could do. So technological developments. So technological developments refer to the improvements in a product or process due to improvements in science or engineering. So how have we got better? How are we more efficient? How are we more capable? How are we able to do things more effectively than we used to? So that's what we call technological development. So we're going to have a look at CAD first. Now these YouTube links here are in the description. So can I just ask you, if you are watching live, pause the stream, go and have a look. If you are watching after the fact, pause the stream and go and have a look after, now. So there's a couple of different ones on different topics, but all of them show you CAD. Okay. So what is CAD? We'll have a chat, and when you come back, we'll carry on now. But when you come back to me, we'll learn a little bit more about CAD. So okay. So feel free to pause it, go and have a look at them, come back to me. All right. So an interactive computer system which is capable of operating, storing, and using computer graphics. It assists design engineers in solving design problems. So you may have used it. You may have used it at school. You may have used it at during design technology lessons, that kind of stuff. But CAD is a really, really, it's like it's a very, what's the word, revolutionary, I'd say, a piece of technology, CAD, because it's computer-aided design. And it gives you an ability to do things like this that we have on the screen there. It means that you have the ability to test things, and you have the ability to create things in a virtual space without having the expense of actually physically doing it. You'd be able to try things. You'd be able to put people in difficult situations. You'd be able to, put products in stressful situations that you wouldn't actually physically have to put them in stressful situations, that kind of stuff. But it is something that you can, use to try different things. Like what if scenarios is a brilliant one for CAD. Okay, so it says firms that design products on screen and then test it without the need to build in a prototype, because prototyping is very expensive. Can you think an advantage of this? Well, main thing is the expense that you save from doing it. So you're able to invest that money into other things. Remember, it's all about making sure that we minimize costs, maximize revenue. So if you can do that, then a lot of the time we're going to be spending on prototyping, on employing people to do these things. We can free up those jobs and things like that. One of the main things I think is the issue with this, though, and it says a disadvantage of this, is the fact that sometimes the system is wrong, and sometimes the reality of the situation is slightly different than the pretend one, if you will, the virtual reality. So in which case, if we're in a situation like that, if we're in a situation where the disadvantage, if we design something and then when we actually build it, it doesn't work, that means that there was something wrong with the system, or maybe the information that we used to make the system, or the person who made the system made a mistake. But we've got to be absolutely certain before we start doing anything, which we can only be a certain amount of certainty, can't we, in reality, to actually produce an online prototype like this, that it is actually going to react like it would in actual reality rather than virtual reality. So that's an issue. We never absolutely know it's going to be perfect. We do have brilliant systems. If you talk about Audi or something like that now making cars, they are going to have fantastic systems that are well checked, well established, well prepared, and they're not going to have to worry about things like, oh well, what if it's slightly wrong? But if there is a glitch in the system or something like that, another disadvantage as well is putting everything in a very accessible place like this. Because if we have hackers, or we have people who are trying to access your information, industrial espionage, that kind of stuff. And it does happen, that we've got to be worried about. The worry is that if we've got all our systems on like this, if we've got all our prototypes in a non-physical format, but something that someone could just make a copy of, then there is a threat to the business that someone could come and steal our stuff, isn't there? So you've got to be careful with things like that. All right. Now it says AO2, a business or industry that would be particularly useful. Again, I've put it in the I think it's the fourth one. But yeah. Anyway, house builders is a brilliant one. They use CAD all the time, to design structures of things. They're actually, getting, the layout of the whole area, the layout of the buildings, the actual buildings themselves. There's a wide range of things they can do, can't they? And another thing, I don't know if you've seen this on the BBC now, but they're actually going one step further with this now, but you can actually CAD up an example of a building, and then you can use virtual reality to actually take those people who are potentially buyers into the building. There's a BBC programme about it now where they do it and take people into the potential, what they could do with the houses. It's interesting. It shows what you could do, doesn't it? Whoops. Sorry about that. Okay, Cam. The use of computers as part of the production process. Can you think of any examples where it would be useful? Well, there's a number of times, isn't there? But the main thing that we think that it would be useful, as I said, house building, cars, manufacturing in general is really strong. But the more technologically advanced we get with things, the more complicated, the more times we're going to have to do prototyping. You know, any physical manufacturer it'd be really, really useful for. And it says, can you think of any advantages? It says, ensure consistent output and quality. Yeah, that's a really good point. Remember, CAD. We're talking about CAM. We've changed that. We just switch over. It's only because we're talking about it. It does still apply, doesn't it, to this? So that's why they're so interchangeable, and that's why it can be a little bit confusing in the exam sometimes, because you get CAD and CAM mixed up. Just because I haven't clocked it at the top there, but right, let's go back. Let's just reiterate this. So the use of computers as part of the production process, CAM. So when we're talking about computer-aided design, we've been talking about, how we physically design things, but the use of computers in the actual production process, we call CAM, which is computer-aided manufacture. So can you think of any example industries where it would be useful? Well, computer-aided manufacture is anything where you're going to have repetition and things. You've got to think about what are the limitations of the human body, what are the limitations of the human mind, what are the limitations of a low-skill, low-paid workforce, essentially. Because if we're doing manufacture, and I'm not saying that all manufacture is low-skill, low-wage, but we definitely associate with something like that. But computer-aided manufacture can be really, really helpful with things like this, because what we can do is we can get things which would usually be quite detrimental to humans in terms of repetitive, laborious work, and we can get a computer to do it. So there isn't any issues with that in terms of that. So if you've got to repeat something 1,000 times a day, and in terms of that would actually physically hurt a human to do, because you get repetitive strain injury and things like that. Instead of having to worry about things like that, you can simply replace them with a robot who isn't going to get tired, isn't going to get sick, isn't going to get grumpy, isn't going to get mental health issues or anything like that. And this is the problem that we're having at the minute, when you realise that computer-aided manufacture, computers in general, is a better way of doing it, isn't it? It seems to be the more efficient we get, the less need for humans to be involved we get. So this is computer-aided manufacture can be very broad as well. It can go anything from getting machinery to do things, because we're going to talk about robotics in a minute, and there's kind of a crossover in that, but it can be anything from 3D printing, to physically computer aided, where we actually get a computer to help us with something when we're doing it. And when we get in AI, in terms of artificial intelligence and stuff like that we're bringing in now, with computers more able to understand and more able to actively help us with doing things, then it is going to change the way that we do things quite dramatically, isn't it? So in terms of manufacturing, there has been, when we were at Jaguar Land Rover, we saw that there was machines that helped people. So you physically, it was like a pressurized arm that picked something up. The person was able to lift really, really heavy things really, really easily, and it meant that there was less pressure on the person who was doing it. Still was the human involvement. They were still involved with actually physically putting the things together, but there was the computer helping them out, the machinery helping them out as well. Okay, so we've got the but anyway, and again, the CAM process can also lead to something like 3D printing, where it's completely computer aided in manufacture. Computer aided would be the wrong example then, wouldn't it? It would be the wrong word for it, really, because computer made manufacture would be better, or computer manufacture, or computed manufacture, or something like that would probably be better, because it's physically making the product itself. There isn't really much human interaction at all in that, other than the design aspect, which would be more CAD, wasn't it? So can you think of any example industries where it would be useful? There could be a wide range of them, couldn't it? Probably your low skill, low wage, or your hyper high skill, high wage stuff, where you are producing very, very important that they are consistent. And say you were working on aeroplane parts or something like that. If you've got a tiny little bit of something that's wrong, it could just be 1 millimeter out, and then it ends up having a wing off a plane ripped off halfway through the flight and things like that, and loads of people die. That it's life and death at the end of the day, isn't it? It's really, really important. I suppose at the minute as well, if we just go back to CAD, this kind of stuff is actively being used at this moment in time in the pharmaceutical industry, isn't it? Significantly all the time about the lockdown things, and we're going to talk about when we get to the BBC in a bit. When we talk about the news, there is actually some technological stuff which is going on in the news right now. But if we look at this, yeah, they're going to be modelling stuff, and I have to say as well, if you have a smartphone, which I'm hope you do, I'm sure most people do, there's a thing that you can get called Dream Labs. Dream Lab. It looks like that. Okay. And Dream Lab is an app that you can get, which is, I think it's Vodafone, but basically what happens is, when your phone isn't in use, so when you put your phone on charge, usually at night, it uses the processor in your phone to do calculations for scientific purposes. So, for example, at the moment, they are doing it on COVID-19, they're doing it on cancer, they're doing it on lots of different things. And basically, they run scenarios. So they're doing computer-aided design. They're running what-if scenarios and seeing how molecules interact with each other and run all these different scenarios. And you can help. It makes no difference to your phone or anything like that. You literally just install it. So, Dream Labs, I'll put it in the description, but you can have a look at it. But I would definitely implore everybody who's watching this, just download it. It's no skin off your nose. It literally runs in the background when your phone isn't in use. That's all it does. It doesn't wreck anything, don't worry, as I said. All right. So, Cam, what's it good for? Well, it ensures consistency of output and quality because it's more of a machine doing it than you. So there's less of that human element in it. Reduces the need for human labour. We can have issues with motivation and things like that come with that, and also obviously trade union involvement, just to link it in with other bits of the spec. We've got, it's faster, it's more productive. Yeah, I mean, not always, but I think definitely over time it could be more, if you've got a hell of a lot of people doing work, and you might get some people who are very, very skilled and have the ability to do things, but also you're also going to have people who, even the most skilled craftsman in the world is only going to be able to create a certain amount, and then they're going to get tired. With computer-aided manufacturer, they don't get tired, which is really good. Really good, isn't it? It minimises waste as well. We can use the bare minimum. It's all to do with that design, but we can reiterate those designs, can't we? Disadvantages: we've got expensive initial setup. Of course, yeah, it's going to be more expensive, and it does lead into this kind of monopolistic, but monopoly, oligopoly kind of thing, because there will be businesses that can afford to do this and businesses that can't, and it tends to be the larger businesses who tend to use this, gives them a competitive advantage and things like that, which in turn keeps them at the top. So it's kind of like starts like a circle, a paradox kind of thing. Can face resistance from workers, and it's what I mentioned at the start. People are frightened of change, and people are frightened of implementing these kind of things because they're worried about the jobs. The fact that we're doing this on stream now, it's not something that I've ever done, but this is probably the way it's going to go. This is probably the way it's going to be in the future. We're probably not going to come into contact with each other as much, because why bother? Why bother having 30 teenagers in a room with a teacher when you can just simply, they can log on, they can get the work done. I don't think it's the same. I don't think you're going to get the same sort of response. I don't think you're going to get the same sort of thing, and there's no guarantee that they're actually doing the work and things like that. But I don't know, maybe people will get used to it and have the expectation on themselves. I don't think that's what education is necessarily exactly for in this country. I think that we use it for a number of reasons, including getting people off the streets and getting people out of the house and things like that, and there is a social aspect to it. But you know what? Who am I? It's not going to be me who's making that decision, is it? Finally is robotics. Well, I say finally is robotics. There's another one, but finally, a robot is a automated and controlled piece of machinery that is programmed to complete a set task or a number of tasks. So it's very similar to your CAM, in terms of computer-aided manufacture. These go hand in hand, but essentially robotics are the physical robots that physically do things. So you see these massive things in the manufacturing plants with these big arms, these big things that come and physically do work or repeat things or whatever it is. It says they improve quality, they lower cost, they make production more flexible. Why are they more flexible? Well, basically because you're very, very easily able to reprogram these things to do something completely different. We talked about multi-skilling your workforce and the importance of doing that because of absenteeism. Well, one thing is that robots aren't ever absent from work. Either they don't take a day off, or they don't, as I said, take 6 months off because they're ill or whatever it is. But they do make production more flexible, that kind of stuff, because they can you can just reset them to do something else. Robots can be useful when we need a high level of accuracy and precision. Okay, like we said, we're not taking it away from humans, but there will be an element of you could be ill, you might have a sore eye, you could have something on your mind, whatever it is. Robots don't have a bad day. The only issue with robots is that we could, put the information in wrong and end up doing 2,000 units completely wrong. But potentially you could do that with humans as well, I suppose. The job has a high level of repeatability if we have these things. So if we have these, then essentially we've got robotics. So CAM and robotics are sometimes sort of... people get confused by the same things, but don't worry about that. In terms of if you're talking about CAM and robotics interchangeably, then it's not really a massive issue, really, because they are implemented together. Computer aided manufacture and robotics are things which are used. Robotics are used in computer aided manufacture to help you do things. So don't worry too much about getting them really, really specifically in your mind of, wait a minute, well, no, that's not robotics, because robotics includes just having an arm that does something. Well, not necessarily. Robotics are the kind of physical machinery, these kind of stuff that do it. And have a look at the video. As I said, I've put it on the thing for you, the description for you to have a look at. All right. We've got computer modelling as well. So computer modelling, using computers to model different what-if scenarios. We talked about it before, about the CAD side of things. Yeah, this is what we use. So with the aim of improving efficiency of production to the perfect methods, like I said, Dreamlab, have a look for it on the App Store. It's not just for Android, it's for iPhone as well. And if you're interested, there's one that you can get for computers as well. I can't remember what it's called. It's called Something at Home. I'll have to have a look at that for you. I'll see if I can put it in the description. But anyway, so using computers to model different what-if scenarios with the aim of improving efficiency through production and to perfect products. So what do? Well, we get a car model, don't we? We CAD it up, we make the perfect idea, and then we put it in a situation, we put it in a modelling piece of software where we can check the sort of how it responds to different situations. We can have people break it, we can have it run into walls, we can have people, stamp on it, we can have different amount of forces, we can see how it responds to gravity, we can see how it does in water, whatever it is. So our systems are becoming so good now, our computer systems are becoming so good that we don't need to make these prototypes anymore. We don't need to pay these companies massive amounts of money, prototyping companies, to physically make things like that. Because we can do it on screen. The only thing I'd say that computer modelling hasn't got yet is it hasn't got that wow kind of factor where you want to go to a bank and you want to show them a physical product, or if you want to show a potential customer. You can show them to an extent, like computer modelling, like I said about the potential idea for the the BBC using it with house builders and stuff like that, and them to show people around. Yeah, okay, but people are still going to want something that they can hold. Consumers still haven't got to the point where they're very comfortable with this whole idea. It's very like, oh yeah, virtual reality, very like quaint and sci-fi at the minute. So, for example, manufacturers of wind turbines have used it to test the angle at which the blades go to see which would be most efficient. Can you think of any other examples? Cars are the main big example I always think of. Trying different types of... You can look at the aerodynamics of the car, so you can look at the design, you can look at the wind restriction, you can look at how things happen, you can look at cars crashing. You don't have to smash a car up. However, interesting enough, although you can do all the computer modelling you want, isn't it interesting that we still have a system in place to make sure that companies do actually physically test products themselves. We physically test the products. We don't just use computer modelling before they go to consumers. So we have, say we're talking about the car industry, we also have places that you have to take the car for them to have tests. You might have seen them on Top Gear and things like that, where they take them to get tested before they're roadworthy and things like that. And you also have other issues, don't you, of computer modelling, stuff like that, where you can make things look different than you did. It was Volkswagen, wasn't it, who recently got involved with a big scandal of changing some of the data that they needed to output to make sure it looked like that they were able to bring out some cars when they shouldn't have done. That's very naughty. And it probably tells us why some of the issues of having computer modelling, because they're not always perfect, they're not always ideal. But yeah, you can use them in a wide range of different things, can't you? I think the house builder one's really, really good. Cars, airplane manufacture, anything that's very big, but even computer systems, I thought an interesting one's Lego. Lego definitely do it. I bought a massive Lego set at the minute. It's the I think it's like the fourth or fifth biggest one that you can buy. It's called Ninjago City. Go and have a look for it if you want. But I'm just working through that at the minute, just for something to occupy my brain. Not that I've got loads to do. Have you got loads to do? I seem to have loads to do. Yeah, the interesting thing with that is they use computer modeling. And they use CAD to actually figure it out. And if you ever had a Lego set, when you open the Lego booklet, it tells you the steps on how to do it. They use CAD to show you how they do it, which is interesting. Have a look at it because you'll find it. IT. Now, people know of IT because they know of it in schools, don't they? You know, oh, I used to trouble IT. Oh, I hate IT. Oh, I'm not good at IT. Remember, if you're not, then you're an idiot. And that's the words of Mr. Businessman. Get tech savvy. Come on, being able to adequately use a computer in the year 2020, or use a smartphone without saying I can't use Android, I can't use iPhone, or whatever it is that you're saying this week. It is not appropriate or sensible. It makes you sound thick. All right. Because it's not hard, and it's not impressive not being able to use technology either. It's not something that you're ever going to go, oh yeah, I'm such an idiot that I can't use technology, basic technology. And I'm not talking about I'm not talking about hard technology. I'm not talking about really difficult stuff. I'm talking about basic computer systems which are made for consumers like you. So don't let yourself off with that. Not to stand on my soapbox or anything, but I'm fed up of hearing of it. Students coming into college that can't even send an email. It's embarrassing. Oh yeah, well I can do it on an app on my phone. It's embarrassing, isn't it? And it is a failure of education to an extent, but come on, it's not good enough, is it? So how might IT be used? Information technology. Well, the main things of this one is going to be phones. It's going to be computers. It's going to be TVs. It's going to be, it's going to be anything that we can use to communicate. So communication is a big one, isn't it, in terms of this? So I'd say, emails is a big one. That was completely revolutionary. Phones, mobile internet. What other things can we do with IT? Computer systems, Excel, PowerPoints, that kind of stuff. So we've got a wide range of things that we can use it for, but it's just the basics, this one. It's just like the overall IT stuff that we use, the overall computer systems and things that we use day to day. Benefits of using it makes it a lot easier to communicate people, a lot more, look at what's happening in this lockdown situation at the minute. We are still able to have lessons like this. This is IT, isn't it? Being able to use YouTube, being able to stream, being able to be live like this. If someone writes something in the chat now, I can see it. I can respond with you even though we're not in the same room, even though we might not even be in the same country. We'll still be able to see each other. We'll still be able to communicate, and that's incredible. Being able to keep people safe, things like that. And also think about from IT perspective, talk about keeping people safe, but keeping stuff safe. Think about your CCTV, think about your security systems. They're run by IT, aren't they? They're run on a computer system, so it's it's more centered around that kind of stuff as well. So benefits of using it, as I said, we've definitely got the reduction of potential costs that we might incur by having things stolen. For the IT, sort of the security side of things, for the benefits that you can have from being able to communicate all over the world. One thing I always think with IT as well is when you stop working here, if you've got a business in somewhere like Australia, when we're asleep they're awake kind of thing, they can carry on working. And some businesses do that. They have about 6 or 7 different countries that they move to throughout the day. So once one stops, they move it to the next one, they move it to the next one, they move it to the next one. So that means that once you're having 24 hours a day work on some projects, which means that you do a bit today, but when you come back to it, there's going to be another 16 hours of work done on it or something like that, which is amazing, isn't it? What a productivity increase, what a efficiency boost. Drawbacks of using IT, we do have these people. As I said, the main thing is the issues is getting people on board with it. People having very, very strange ideas of what technology is and what IT is and why they should be different and you shouldn't make them do anything and blah, blah, blah. We do have a problem with hackers. We do have problems with people who are malicious, who are trying to take things done. We talked about industrial espionage and trying to, make copies of things and things like that. It's much easier to steal information, and we do have, legislation in place to protect people's information, GDPR and things like that. But there is a big issue, isn't there, in terms of this, of not only being able to communicate effectively with consumers, being able to send out mass emails and things like that to do marketing, but then you're going to have the legislation issues that go with that. So IT is a very broad one, but yeah, it's probably the one that you're most, connected with. Now, it says evaluate the importance of impact of technology on the operation of a business, importance of using technology. We've got a couple of one of these. So, improve quality. Now, we can't guarantee that, but if we make the system correct, if we do that, if everything goes right, if we get all our ducks in order, then there's no reason why we can't improve quality. Why can we improve quality? Because we get that consistency, don't we? We get the consistency that humans maybe can't be as consistent as computers can. They don't get ill, they don't get annoyed or anything like that. Faster innovation. Why have we got faster innovation? Well, because we're not brought down by things which would stop us. By being able to use CAD/CAM, being able to use robotics, being able to use computer modeling to check systems over to model different things. You might be able to do 1,000 models. You could have loads of people all working on the same project all at once. That's something that you've not been able to do before, all with the same piece of information, all with the same software and things like that. So it's incredible. More effective marketing and sales, because we've been able to get to people. Remember, if you want to do direct marketing, get to people's emails, get to people's mobile phones. I always think about Domino's doing it particularly well, where they send you a text message at 4 o'clock on a Friday saying, "Oh, do you fancy a Domino's tonight?" It's very clever because you're thinking, "Oh, yeah, what am I going to have for my meal tonight? Oh yeah, that'd be good. Yeah, we could have a takeaway, couldn't we?" Interestingly enough, have you noticed it seems like have you noticed day to day, but have you noticed in the lockdown as well that people are still doing that with takeaways? People are still keeping to like Fridays for takeaways. I don't know why, because it's not like it matters, does it? If you're off all the time, it makes no difference what day you do things. It doesn't matter if it's a Monday or a Sunday. Have a takeaway whenever you want. But if you go to a takeaway on a Friday night, it's absolutely rammed. Which is insane, isn't it? Why? Why does it matter? If you go on a Wednesday night, it's not that busy. People are still reverting to form, aren't they? Less dependency on labour, because we've got that more of a computer aspect of it, haven't we? So hopefully it means that we can replace people, make people redundant if we need to, which would be helpful for the business. Increase productivity, again, because of the ability to get computers to do things instead. Reduce waste and costs and improve communications with IT, things like that. Really good. Okay. Now, one of the considerations we've got to make, though, one of the issues that we've got is the affordability of it. It isn't cheap. It is something that we have to really, really consider, and it is something that we need to be aware that smaller businesses just might not be able to afford to be able to do this. Will it add value to cover the cost of investment? We don't know at that point, do we? We think it does, and this is important that we do the test, do the break-evens, do the cash flow forecast and things like that before we do it to make sure it will, and do the checks. Because if we don't check it, then there's no reason why it might be successful. It could be complete tosh. It could completely fall over on itself and be a massive waste of money. Short-term problems and cost and employee training against long-term efficiencies and savings. That's what you've got to look at as well, isn't it? Are you going to smash your morale of your company employees by doing this? Potentially. Something that we need to worry about, isn't it? And it depends on the culture of the business. It depends on how well people react to change and things like that. Okay. Now, it says evaluate the impact of new technology on the various stakeholders of a business. Now, we've got the stakeholder section again, which we do all the time because we love it so much, don't we? And we know it's going to be in the final exam. Employees, local community, government, suppliers, customers, managers, competitors. Yep. Now, I've gone through each one of them, so if you want to pause the video here, have a little think, write some stuff down yourself before that I go through the answers, I think that would be a sensible thing to do. So I'll just give you a second to pause the video. Welcome back. And let's go through them. Okay. So, let's go through different ones. So we want to be looking at different stakeholders, don't we? So if we've got improved quality, then we've got customers will be happier, won't they? Because if we've got so we've got to link the positives of each one of them to these. So customers will find more satisfaction, they'll be happier, they will rebuy. It's good for the business, it's good for customers. Because remember, customers, what do customers want? They want the best quality they can get at the cheapest price they can get. Faster innovation. So shareholders will be happier. Why? Because we've got lower or quicker research and development. Research and development, if you remember, is very, very expensive to do, and it means that it can massively affect our cash flow because we're putting money into it without being able to sell anything. So we might have that first mover advantage as well, which means that shareholders are going to be happier because hopefully that will change into revenue, which can be paid to them in dividends. More effective marketing and sales. Managers who are dealing with these kind of stuff And we can use marketing economies of scale, can't we, as well? Remember, marketing economies of scale is where that you can use large marketing campaigns to do the whole brand as well, to be able to get the brand known and get the whole business known rather than just individual products, because you're larger in it. It's easier to do this. So we've definitely got that process in this one, haven't we? Because we have the ability to easily market and things like that and get that word out. Less dependency on labour. It could have a negative impact on employees because we've got that. They could be made redundant, and managers could have a negative impact on managers because they could be dealing with redundancies and the issues that come with that. No one likes telling someone that they've lost a job. Increased productivity, managers, lower unit costs, so they're going to be happier, aren't they? Because one of the main things that managers are trying to do is cost minimization. So if they can lower unit cost, then that's fantastic for them. Customers potentially could result in lower selling price. It depends, doesn't it? Remember, if you make a saving in your manufacturing process, you can either pass that saving on to your consumer, but more importantly, you can increase your profit margin. A lot of businesses just choose to do that. Reduce waste and costs. Well, if we reduce our waste and costs, then the local community and the environment are going to be happier, can't they? This lockdown has had a really, really good impact on some businesses and some because it's allowed them to stop being so pollutive for a little bit, and it's had a really good impact on environment and things and local community. People are actually talking to each other for once. Strangely, even though the time is distinctly don't speak to each other, that's what we're doing. And improved communications. IT is a fantastic one for this, isn't it? But suppliers, easier to maintain contact. We can use it for just-in-time production. If you remember, just-in-time production is when we get the stuff just as we need it, rather than storing things, insuring things, making things don't get stolen, that kind of stuff. All right. Now, got a past paper question here. Last thing we're going to do today before we have a little look at the news is we're going to have a look at the past paper question. So stay with me. Let's have a little look at this. And if you want, feel free to have a go at one of the questions. Have a go at this question, it's a really, really good example, this one. Okay, so it says, Britain is clearly a nation of cake eaters. Not only do we gobble up 240 million Mr. Kipling cakes, slices a year, but such is the demand for exceedingly good French fancies and Battenberg cake that Premier Foods is expanding. The country's largest food manufacturer has opened up a new production line at its factory in Carlton, South Yorkshire, which will more than double its capacity of Mr. Kipling, the top-selling brand. The new production line will cost $20 million and was partly financed by Premier Foods selling its Hovis brand. Gavin Darby, chief executive of Premier Foods, said that there was a new line was working at full speed. It will be able to produce an additional 3,000 million cakes a year. 3,000 million? Isn't that 3 billion? We've been working at maximum capacity for a while now. The new production line is a very high-tech automated line that has 240 metres long and can make 60,000 slices an hour. We have made people working on it 3 different shifts, operating day and night. This is one of the things that we said, isn't it? About being able to, output so much more with these brilliant bits of technology. Cakes are just one of the products that Premier Foods product portfolio. Other products include custard, jam, flour, cooking sauces and gravy. In the year that's ended 4th of April 2015, they made 294 million. Gross profit and 131. Net profit, sales turnover of 767 million. So big numbers. We're talking about very big numbers here, aren't we? Now, did you notice the other day, actually, we talked about Premier Foods and we talked about Mr. Kipling actually in the news, because they said that Premier Foods have been saying that they've been doing brilliantly in the lockdown because they're loads of people are buying cake. So this is it's weird how many of these businesses are showing themselves, connection to these things. So with these in mind then, let's have a look at some questions. All right. So it says, discuss the benefits and drawbacks of Premier Foods of spending large amounts of money on new technology. So it's just 8 marks. So let's have a look at that. Discuss. Discuss is going to be an AO4. The benefits and drawbacks. So we know if there's benefits and drawbacks, it must be AO4. To Premier Foods. Well, if it's Premier Foods, it's got to be AO2. So we've got AO4 and AO2. Spending large amounts of money on new technology. So I'd say on this one, AO1, AO2, AO4 potentially on this one. I mean, it could have 2, 2, 2, 2. It could have AO1, AO2, AO3, AO4. But with this one, if we were to just break it down, discuss, we've got AO4. Premier Foods, we've got AO2. New technology, AO1. So there isn't a distinct one. It isn't a sort of an explain bit in there to have the AO3, but potentially it could be in there. So let's have a look back. Discuss the benefits and drawbacks of Premier Foods. Well, the big benefit to this company, isn't it, is their ability to produce more and the ability to reduce their costs by making people redundant and making sure that their quality is consistent. We know that in Mr. Kipling, because they're making food, we know that consistency has to be, consistent. It has to be something which is, something which is kept up, that making sure that everything's the same. We want to be able to buy a French fancy. We want the first one of the 300,000th one to be exactly the same, and because the brand requires that, doesn't it? You always want the same thing. Disadvantages, though, we're going to have this issue with laying people off. It says, doesn't it, that you can imagine that Premier Foods is going to have quite an impact on its local community if they're producing so many products. They're going to need a load of staff. So if they're making people redundant, then that means that the local community is going to suffer quite a bit, isn't it? So there is a disadvantage to that, because they're going to maybe lose face with the local community and things like that. They're going to have negativity brought on them, maybe any negative marketing in terms that comes back to them, sort of PR and negative sort of stuff that comes back. Also, it talks about things like one of the big advantages to them would be economies of scale, wouldn't it? So if they're producing more, they might be able to benefit more. As I said, I'm going to rip my nose off in a minute because it's annoying me so much. It's hay fever. I get hay fever earlier on in the year, you see. So it really struggle. I struggle with it because it's just one of those things. Sorry about that. Yeah, so we've got the economies of scale that we can purchase in economies of scale. We've got managerial economies of scale and things like that, because we've got the ability to do things on mass, haven't we? I think overall it's going to be a big advantage to these, because even though we would have to deal with the negativities of making people redundant and things like that, potentially, I mean, the cost savings we're going to make in terms of the efficiency savings is going to be so significant that it's worth doing. Even though I sound like a proper militant businessman, don't I? Now, we've got two other ones. It says, describe the ways in which new technology is used by car manufacturers to improve the operation of the business. So let's have a look at the question. Describe the ways in which new technology is used. Well, describe isn't discuss. Describe isn't evaluate. It's AO3, isn't it? So describe the ways in which new technology, AO1, is used by major car manufacturers, AO2. So AO1, AO2, AO3, this one. We've not got any AO4 because there's no need to give both sides of the argument. So describing ways new technology is used by car manufacturers to improve the operation of the business. We'll be looking at CAD/CAM. We'll be looking at robotics. We'll be looking at IT and computer modelling. What I would do for that one is I would just do 5 paragraphs. I'd just do a paragraph on each one. I'd just do a CAD one, a CAM one, a robotics one, a computer modelling one, and an IT one, and just a basic overview of what the and apply it to car manufacturers. Bob's your uncle, 10 marks. Great stuff. Remember, for that one, you're going to have 1.5 minutes on average per mark, so you've got 15 minutes to do it, 15 minutes to do 5 small paragraphs. Yeah, I think that is okay. And then finally, the introduction of new technology to a business will be a positive move for all stakeholders. Discuss this statement. Okay, discuss this statement is definitely going to be AO4. The introduction of new technology into a business will have a positive move on all stakeholders. So it's kind of like this is a stakeholder question essentially, isn't it? So we're definitely going to get one of these in the final exam. So this is more of, instead of I don't want you to be thinking of like, what AOs are in this. I want you to be thinking more about how do we answer a stakeholder question. And how do we answer that stakeholder question? You need to go through each of the stakeholders that we know of and talk about the positives and negatives of them, essentially, and have a conclusion, don't we? So think less of your AO1, AO2, AO3, AO4 in that regard, and think more about how do we answer a stakeholder question. How do we answer it? We talk about each of them in turn, and we talk about the benefits and disadvantages to them, apply them to the situation. Perfect. Don't forget your conclusion as well with that one. Okay. So, ladies and gents, 53 minutes. We did all right there. We are going to have a little look at the news, so bear with me. And let's have a look at what's happening in the world today. I hope it's been very useful for you, because I think technology is one of the things that people really struggle with. But it's one of the ones as well that people need. People think about technology. They get into the situation and think, actually, I'll talk about computers and things like that. And to an extent you can, but a lot of the time they don't want you to do that. A lot of the time they want you in your exam they'll want you to talk about CAD/CAM, robotics, computer modelling, that kind of stuff. They're not just talking about basic technology. All right. So let's have a little look at what's happening in the news. So, rising virus care home toll leads to record deaths. Ooh, it's a bit dark, isn't it? Let's have a look at this anyway. So, this is brilliant, isn't it? Did you see this about Donald Trump and the disinfectant? Goodness me. Right, let's have a look at these. Let's have a look at the business news. Ooh, right, let's have a look at this one. So, HSBC. Now, why do you think HSBC are looking at cutting 35,000 jobs? Could it be to do with technology? Probably, because they've no need to have the people in things anymore, have they? So HSBC has paused plans to cut 35,000 jobs, saying it does not want to leave staff unable to find work elsewhere during the coronavirus outbreak. That's very nice of them, isn't there? The bank announced that cuts in February as part of a massive cost-cutting program, which what we've just been talking about. As boss Noel Quinn said that the vast majority of redundancies would now be put on hold due to exceptional circumstances. It came as HSBC reported a 50% fall in profits linked to the pandemic. Pre-tax earnings of the first 3 months came in at 3.2 billion, down from 6.2 billion a year ago. The bank forecast bad loans would rise to 3 billion due to customers not being able to repay them during the crisis. It also said that earnings were likely to remain under pressure. It's going to be a big... Well, look at the state of it, though. Come on. They're doing well, aren't they? They can afford it. Look at this one. They've done really badly in some quarters. They've done much worse. So, it's not a massive thing, is it, really? Earlier this year, the HSBC said it planned to scale back its headcount from 235,000 to about 200,000 over the next 3 years. It's part of a restructuring programme to aim to achieve a £4.5 billion cost... Sorry, £3.6 billion cost cut by 2022. And he said... it's probably the best bit of news as a whole for employees, but it's good news for the employees isn't necessarily good news for the shareholders. There's your stakeholders, because it's not going to give them what they want, is it? This is why I draw your attention to this stuff, because it's very, very real life. Don't pretend that this isn't. Apply it to real life. This is important. It's not just an exam. You are a business student. You are a student of business, but you know that it's real life. This, isn't it? So go and have a look at it. Apply it to the real world. Let's have a look at some of those ones. I'm just going to play this. I'm just going to check this. I'm going to play it and I'm going to see if you can hear it. All right. Can you hear that? I don't think you can. I think it's going to be silent that. But if you can, brilliant. If you can, I will show you some videos in future in terms of this. But if you can't, I don't think you can. And this is a good bit of video, isn't it? Me watching a video in silence, if it is on silence. I'm only showing you the whole thing because if it is working, it's only a minute, isn't it? We'll know for future reference. As I said, this is a live test. We'll have a look in a bit. Anyway, says people have reverted to shopping the way they did a decade ago by making one big weekly stop to the supermarket instead of, according to the boss of Tesco. Dave Lewis said COVID-19 social distancing means that consumers are shopping less frequently. He said that the number of transactions in April nearly halved, but the size of the average basket has doubled. Mr. Lewis and added Tesco that's now broken through the 1 million online delivery slots a week for the first time. This is going to fundamentally change business, isn't it? It's the external environment coming in and messing up the world. Maybe in the future this is what we're supposed to be doing. Maybe we won't go out and do supermarkets. Maybe it will be delivered to us. It's not something that we've been doing, but look at people using video calling and Zoom and stuff like that. People had never used it before, and now they're like, oh, look at this brilliant technology. Yeah, it's been around for years. It's just you're a Philistine and don't know. Let's have a look at another one. What else have we got? BP profits. BP profits dive 66% as coronavirus hits oil demand. This is still an ongoing thing, isn't it? We know that petrol and diesel has gone very, very cheap at the minute. BP's first quarter profit has dived into two-thirds of after the global coronavirus crisis hit demand for oil. The oil diet warned of its facing an exceptional level of uncertainty after a sharp reduction in the need for its products. Lockdown around the world have been keeping people inside, slashing demand for oil. It has sent prices to 20-year lows, with US oil turning negative briefly for the first time last week. BP said its underlying replacement cost profit, its definition of net income, was 645 million for the first 3 months of 2020, down 2.4 billion. Whoa, think of that. Down 2.4 billion. However, it said it will keep paying investors a dividend. Well, yeah, I still think BP is a good investment. I still don't think there's much to worry about. With that, we're focusing on efforts of protecting our people, supporting our communities, and strengthening our finances. Again, they're looking at the stakeholders, aren't they? They're looking at the stakeholders and trying to keep them consistent. Let's do one more. What have we got? I returned my suits and spent £100 on joggers. Why? Lawyer Samantha Hewitt has swapped her suits for loungewear. A few weeks ago, London-based lawyer Samantha Hewitt decided to refresh her office wardrobe, going online to buy new suits and dresses. Oh, well, congratulations, Samantha. This is national news. This is on the BBC. Goodness me. Then the coronavirus lockdown hit, and suddenly much of Britain was forced into become a nation of homeworkers. Miss Hewitt immediately sent her sober corporate gear back. Why is she buying sober corporate gear? Why not buy something a bit more flamboyant? Why not buy something nice and spend £100 on comfy loungewear instead? Now the elsewhere smart dresser admits she's pretty much living in casual clothes, suitable for relaxing at home, be it hoodies, joggers or pyjamas. I find myself saying to my housemates if I'm going for a walk, oh, it doesn't matter, does it? It's lockdown. Right, is this news? Is the 26-year-old is not only the one making a swap? Who cares? The only thing I would say from this perspective is, from a business perspective, it's really good for these suppliers of cheaper things, in terms of the style of clothing and the businesses who do sell more, corporate stuff, more smart stuff, are probably going to have a problem, for the time being. This time last year, people had spent over 1 billion on clothes for parties and socialising, a further 855 million on gear. Obviously, this needs to be removed from the market at the moment. It says, well, I don't think demand for loungewear is going to offset the fact that many retailers' stores, which account for 70% of the consumer spend, are shut. The smaller or more niche categories will allow retailers to be engaged with their customers and allow that buying habit to keep going. The so-called influencers who frequent social media are also playing a part in the lockdown loungewear trend. I don't know how it's a trend. What, wearing comfy clothes instead of sitting there in a suit in the day? Yeah. Oh no, I regularly do that. I regularly come home and put a three-piece suit on and just sit there and watch TV in a three-piece suit. Right, thank you very much for joining me. I will see you again at 10 tomorrow. I hope you stay safe. Thank you for joining me. Peace.